Have we already seen Conor McGregor's last fight inside the octagon? It's a question that nobody wanted to ask after UFC 329. For years, fans waited for one of the biggest comebacks in UFC history. 5 long years away from competition. Countless setbacks, broken promises, injuries, and finally, Conor McGregor was back. But just 69 seconds later, everything fell apart. Now McGregor has confirmed he's heading into surgery, insists he will fight again, and says this latest setback won't stop him. But here's what makes this story so fascinating. Some of the biggest names in MMA completely disagree on what should happen next. One former champion believes there's only one fight left that makes sense. Another UFC star thinks McGregor should walk away from MMA entirely. One respected analyst even questioned whether Conor truly wanted to continue fighting after the injury. And perhaps the most surprising reaction of all came from someone who spent years standing in the opposite corner of one of McGregor's biggest rivals. Today, we're breaking down every major reaction from across the MMA world, looking at what Conor himself has said since the injury, and at the end, I'll tell you why I honestly believe there are only 2 realistic paths left for one of the biggest superstars this sport has ever seen.
Welcome to MMA TV, built for true MMA fans.
What's up, everyone? This is Zach from MMA TV, your home for UFC news, MMA analysis, fight breakdowns, and everything happening in the world of mixed martial arts. If you enjoy honest discussions about the biggest stories in combat sports, you're in the right place. Now let's get into it. Before we talk about where Conor McGregor goes from here, we first need to understand where things stand today. Just 2 days after the heartbreaking end to UFC 329, McGregor broke his silence on social media, and despite everything that happened inside the octagon, his message was surprisingly clear. He's not done. McGregor confirmed that he'll undergo surgery to repair the knee injury he suffered during his rematch against Max Holloway. According to his own statement, the injury came completely out of nowhere. He explained that he had no knee issues during training camp. He was throwing kicks throughout camp. He was moving normally backstage before the fight. Everything felt perfect. Then, during the opening moments of the fight, his knee gave out. McGregor described the situation as one of the darkest moments of his career, saying he was in complete shock over what had happened. But despite the disappointment, he ended his message with something that immediately caught everyone's attention. "I will return." Those 3 words have completely changed the conversation surrounding his future, because now the debate isn't whether McGregor wants to fight again. According to him, he absolutely does. The real question is, should he? That's where opinions across the MMA world begin to split. Some believe there's unfinished business waiting for him. Others think this latest injury should mark the end of his MMA career, and that's exactly where Israel Adesanya enters the conversation. Former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya didn't hesitate when he was asked about McGregor's future. In his opinion, a third fight with Max Holloway simply doesn't make sense. Not after what happened. Not after another major injury. And certainly not after spending 5 years away from the sport before returning. Adesanya believes asking McGregor to immediately fight someone at Holloway's level again would be an incredibly difficult challenge. Instead, he thinks there's only one fight that truly makes sense. Michael Chandler, not Islam Makhachev, not Ilia Topuria, not another title run, Michael Chandler. And honestly, his reasoning isn't based on rankings, it's based on history. As Adesanya pointed out, Chandler spent years waiting for this fight. The 2 coached opposite each other on The Ultimate Fighter. The UFC built an entire season around their rivalry. The fight was booked. Fans bought into it. Then injuries, delays, and cancellations kept pushing it further away until it never happened. According to Adesanya, McGregor almost owes Chandler that fight after everything the former Bellator champion sacrificed while waiting for the opportunity. And whether you agree with Izzy or not, it's hard to deny that he makes an interesting point. How many times have we seen a fighter spend years chasing one specific matchup, only for it to disappear at the last second? Very few. Michael Chandler built a significant part of the last few years of his career around the possibility of fighting Conor McGregor, and despite all that time, he never got his chance. So let me ask you, do you agree with Israel Adesanya? If Conor returns to MMA, should Michael Chandler be standing in the opposite corner, or do you think that opportunity has already passed? Because coming up next, another UFC star has a completely different opinion. In fact, he doesn't think McGregor should return to MMA at all. He believes Conor should leave the octagon behind forever and chase something much bigger. Let's talk about what Dan Hooker had to say. If Israel Adesanya believes Michael Chandler is the only fight that still makes sense, Dan Hooker sees things very differently. In fact, he doesn't think McGregor should fight in MMA ever again. And honestly, his reasoning is pretty interesting. Speaking to Submission Radio, Hooker admitted he'd still be excited to watch Conor compete, just not inside the octagon. Instead, he believes McGregor should make the transition to boxing for the final chapter of his career. According to Hooker, this latest injury may simply be another reminder that McGregor's body isn't built to handle the demands of mixed martial arts anymore. When you really think about it, it's hard to ignore the pattern. The broken leg against Dustin Poirier, years away from competition, now a serious knee injury only moments into his comeback. That's a brutal stretch for any athlete. Hooker explained that while boxing certainly comes with its own dangers, especially repeated head trauma, MMA places an entirely different kind of stress on the body. Your knees, your ligaments, your hips, your back, your shoulders. Every part of your body is constantly under attack. According to him, boxing simply allows fighters to extend their careers a little longer because there are fewer ways to suffer catastrophic injuries throughout the body. And when you're talking about someone like Conor McGregor, who has already earned hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe chasing another UFC title isn't the smartest business decision anymore. Instead, why not take carefully selected boxing matches, massive paydays, global attention, less wear and tear than another MMA training camp? Hooker even pointed out that people would still tune in to watch McGregor box another huge name, just like they did against Floyd Mayweather. And interestingly enough, Conor himself has never completely closed that door. Before UFC 329, he admitted that discussions about another fight with Floyd Mayweather have continued over the years and that he'd still be open to making it happen. Now, whether that fight actually happens is another conversation entirely. But Hooker's main point is simple. If Conor wants to keep making life-changing money, maybe he doesn't need to keep putting his body through the punishment that comes with MMA. So now let me ask you, if Conor never fights in the UFC again, would you rather see him box another superstar, or would that feel like an unsatisfying ending to one of the greatest MMA careers we've ever seen? But while Hooker looked at McGregor's future from a business perspective, the next opinion was far more controversial. Former UFC analyst Din Thomas didn't hold back. Actually, he delivered one of the harshest takes to come out after UFC 329. Thomas believes McGregor didn't really try to continue once he injured his knee. He compared this fight to McGregor's first meeting with Max Holloway back in 2013. Many longtime fans remember that fight because McGregor later revealed he had torn his ACL during the bout. Yet he still fought through the injury and won by unanimous decision. That's exactly why Thomas questioned what happened this time. He argued that the younger version of Conor would have tried everything possible to continue fighting. Instead, he felt McGregor quickly accepted that the fight was over. Thomas even compared the situation to other fighters who continued competing despite suffering serious injuries inside the cage. His conclusion? He simply didn't believe McGregor showed the same determination that fans expected after promising the greatest comeback in combat sports. Now, personally, I think it's important to be careful here, because none of us truly knows the severity of the injury in that exact moment. Could McGregor have continued? Maybe, maybe not. The reality is, only Conor and the medical team truly know what his knee felt like in those few seconds. Combat sports are unpredictable. Sometimes your body simply refuses to cooperate. And we've seen careers permanently altered because fighters ignored injuries and kept going. So this is one of those debates where I don't think there's a perfect answer. I'd actually love to hear your opinion. Do you agree with Din Thomas? Or do you think stopping the fight was the right decision? Let me know in the comments, because this discussion isn't going away anytime soon. Now here's the reaction that surprised me the most, not because of what was said, but because of who said it. Javier Mendez, the legendary coach behind Khabib Nurmagomedov. If there's anyone you would expect to criticize Conor McGregor, it would probably be someone from Khabib's camp. After everything that happened between those two over the years, nobody would have been shocked if Mendez took the opportunity to pile on. Instead, he did the exact opposite. Mendez admitted that regardless of their history, he genuinely felt sorry for McGregor. He said his heart goes out to Conor because no fighter deserves to spend years preparing for a comeback, only to see it end after barely a minute. What impressed me most was one specific point he made. He said every fighter deserves the opportunity to either win or lose by actually getting the chance to perform. In his eyes, McGregor didn't lose to Max Holloway. He lost to bad luck. And that's something he wouldn't wish on anyone. Honestly, I thought that was a very classy response. You don't have to like someone personally to respect what they've accomplished inside the sport. And I think Javier Mendez showed exactly that. So after hearing all these opinions, Israel Adesanya says Chandler, Dan Hooker says boxing, Din Thomas questions McGregor's mentality, Javier Mendez chooses compassion. Who's right? Well, that's where I want to share my own opinion. And to be honest, I think there are only two realistic paths left for Conor McGregor. I don't see a title run. I don't see another attempt at becoming a champion. I don't see him fighting the next generation of killers at lightweight. At this point in his career, that chapter feels closed. The way I see it, his future comes down to one of two paths. The first one is boxing, and I completely understand why so many people keep bringing it up. Whether you love him or hate him, Conor McGregor is still one of the biggest combat sports stars on the planet. He doesn't need a UFC title to sell millions of pay-per-views. He doesn't even need to fight inside a cage. People will pay to watch him. That's just the reality. If someone offered Conor another massive boxing event, whether it's Floyd Mayweather again or another crossover fight, it would probably generate enormous numbers. Financially, it makes perfect sense. And after everything his body has been through over the last several years, maybe that's the smartest business decision he could make. Training for boxing is still incredibly demanding. Nobody is saying it's easy, but compared to MMA, there's simply less stress on your knees, less stress on your joints, less stress on every part of your body that has betrayed him over the past few years. If the goal is to maximize earnings while minimizing risk, then yes, I completely understand why people like Dan Hooker believe boxing should be next. But even though that option makes sense, it isn't the one I want to see the most, because there's another story that still feels unfinished. Michael Chandler. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more I believe that's the only MMA fight that still matters. Forget the rankings, forget title eliminators, forget championship dreams. This fight has become much bigger than that. It's about unfinished business. Think about everything Michael Chandler sacrificed. He coached The Ultimate Fighter. He spent years preparing for this opportunity. He turned down other possibilities while waiting. Every time people asked him what he wanted, his answer was always the same: Conor McGregor. Then the fight was announced. The excitement was through the roof. Fans couldn't wait. And then, it disappeared. First, it was the broken toe, then another delay, then uncertainty, and eventually, nothing. Meanwhile, Chandler kept waiting. He kept believing. He kept talking about the fight, and somehow, it still never happened. I honestly feel for Michael Chandler, because very few fighters have shown that level of patience. Imagine spending years chasing the biggest fight of your career, only to watch it slip away over and over again. That's tough. And that's exactly why I think Conor owes him that opportunity. Not because of rankings, not because Chandler is next in line, but because this rivalry deserves an ending. Sports need closure, fans need closure, and I think both fighters deserve closure. Can you imagine the atmosphere if that fight was announced one more time? After everything that's happened, the injuries, the delays, the years of waiting, it would immediately become one of the biggest stories in MMA all over again. And here's the part that really gets me. If Michael Chandler finally got that fight and actually beat Conor McGregor after waiting all those years, that would honestly feel like something straight out of a movie. Whether you're a Chandler fan or not, you have to admit, that's an incredible story. Sometimes, sports aren't just about championships. Sometimes, the story is bigger than the belt. And I think this is one of those moments. Now, will any of this actually happen? Nobody knows. Conor still has surgery ahead of him. Recovery comes first. And knee injuries like this aren't something you rush. The most important thing right now is getting healthy. Only after that can we realistically start talking about another fight. The good news for McGregor fans is that he hasn't given up. Quite the opposite. He's already made it clear that he plans to come back. Whether you believe he'll fight again or not, one thing has never changed about Conor McGregor. He's always believed in himself, sometimes more than anyone else. And that's part of what made him one of the biggest stars this sport has ever seen. So now I want to hear from you. If you're the UFC, what do? Do you book Michael Chandler? Do you encourage Conor to take a boxing match instead? Or do you think UFC 329 was the final chapter of his career? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read as many of them as I can, and I'm really curious to see where everyone stands after such an emotional weekend. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to MME TV if you haven't already. We're covering the biggest stories in UFC and MMA every single week, with fight breakdowns, news, predictions, and honest discussions just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate every single one of you supporting the channel. I'll see you in the next one.